top of the morning. My fellow peasants, welcome back. Your hobo-haired resident signing on in and jumping straight back off where we concluded with this video here. The secrets of 16 exposed. I'd been very much traversing through Western and Eastern religions, of which I think there is a very clear divide, at least to me, in Final Fantasy 16. The Western continent of Storm with Sambrique and Rosaria, very clearly mirroring Western religions, very much Catholic imagery with Sambrique, with Rosaria, little crosses, and the inclusion of Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus, Resurrection Phoenix. It's all very there. And then over on Ash, the eastern side, this is east, Barnabas' side, Walode, kind of more dualistic Eastern philosophy going on, which I think also Clive is a part of, being that he's an Ifrit, a Jinn, another name for one of the big Ifrits, one of the commanders of Ifrits, was Iblis, and he's one of the OG fallen angels in Islam, but also in Christianity. Iblis is associated with Samuel, the fallen angel, one who came and tempted Adam and Eve, helped set about the fall of man, but also gave them free will. Yes, I'm sure we all know the story that, what the devil, Lucifer is usually what we interpret it as, but he's actually Samuel. We interpret him as evil, but there's a lot to say that he was allowing humanity to determine its own fate. Not to be like angels who have to obey God, that they have no choice, they have no free will. Angels with halos, cosmogony artwork with icons, all the talk in the trailers of them being bound to these fates. Shiva, Hugo, Benedicta, Shiva, Jill, and at the end of the trailer, fate will fall. And in kind of all religions, including the Gnostics, of which we're going to cover more, it is always that devil figure that comes along and gives free will. It allows humanity to go against God, make choices for itself between right and wrong, and even in the latest trailer we heard Clive more or less saying that.
We don't need your salvation. We'll save ourselves, and we'll do it on our own terms. Come to me, Ifrit!
Like, we will make our own choices. And this is very fitting, being that he is playing this demonic character, Ifrit, a demon in mythological stories. But yeah, where we left off last time, the secrets of Final Fantasy 16 exposed. If you haven't seen this yet, I really recommend it, but I understand it's a 40-minute video, so it's not everyone's cup of tea. I'm going to do a very botched and what will be a disservice effort to quickly summarize this, but I do believe that Gnosticism really is the bridge, the link between all of these different myths, including the Greek ones as well, which we're going to be covering by the end of today's video, which I think is going to titillate you guys just as much as the last one, if you have seen it. But very quick summary. Sophia, she is the goddess, the prime goddess, the prime archon, the 36th, that created Yaldabaoth, that created this material world. This material world is flawed, it's corrupted, it is essentially sapping light and divinity and coalescing it into dark, heavy emotions, and is the cause of all suffering. We go to obviously 16, the Mother Crystal system, causing blight, causing these nations to war and fight. And like we covered in that last video, she didn't really understand the mother-father principle, tried to create gods of her own, of which she created seven prime archons, which we have 7 core summons, of course, extracting the mystery of Leviathan, which in the last video I covered, I do believe could be in place, and the corrupted waters, and this theme of mystery surrounding the oceans in 16 very much ties to Sophia. She crept across the waters, she got lost in the material world, she departed down to the bottom of the ocean. This was her descent from divinity, where more or less she resided, looking to try to make her way back to the light, which the coming of Jesus allowed her to do. But yeah, the void at the bottom of the ocean. And while she did make her way back to the light, she still very much placed this divide in the firmament. Firmament kind of has 2 meanings, just sort of the barrier between the material and the spiritual world, but also firmament in a aquatic sense, the firmament that divides the seas from the ocean. Barnabas go to the bottom seas, yada yada yada. Anyway, she had 7 archons under her. She also had 7 realms placed under them, one of them being the heavenly realm. We have 7 nations, including the Northern Territories, and in creating her son, Yaldabaoth, who I do believe is going to be road-hooded guy, Yaldabaoth / Samuel. And the thing is, I was pinning road-hooded guy on being either, but what's really cool is these are actually, in some texts, the same character, the same figure. In the Apocryphon of John on the origin of the world and the hypostasis of the archons found in the Nag Hammadi library. This is the core bulk of text that was found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. Samael is one of the 3 names of the demiurge, whose other names are Yaldabaoth, Sackless, and Yahweh. So the God of the Old Testament, a false God who brought about all the dark, evil stuff in the Old Testament, and who also crucified Jesus, who, according to the Gnostics, the bride of Christ, someone who was here and supported as an agent of Sophia to help her find her way back to divinity, and to create the access way for humans who are trapped in an evil world, a prison, back to the Pleroma. This is all a very quick, hasty, choppy summary of that last video. But what was also really cool is that to see of the archons that Sophia created, and the 7 realms and the 7 pillars placed beneath her, and like 7 crystals in Final Fantasy 16. 7 being that if there is indeed a mystery one out in the Northern Territories. I just want to caveat that I am anticipating in this theory, or making an assumption that there's certain things that Square Enix are hiding from us and showing for us. But I do believe it will be 7 in the end. We have seen in some of the trailers some crazy happenings with the crystals. One of them looked like it was very Finn-like, Leviathan-esque. We even saw one of the crystals sort of moving out of the ground. And I think these representing the 7 hewn out pillars of Sophia. Wisdom hath builded a house, she hath hewn out 7 pillars, as well as representing the 7 different kingdoms. It's all very succinct, the parallels. And of course, these 7 also relate to the 7 days of the week, as well as the 7 planetary systems, the zodiacs, which we do have members of the Evil East team working on 16. They have deep dived into zodiac and astrology before in Final Fantasy, so to think they do it again, not unheard of. And yeah, we have a red dot up in the sky, which is Mars, which represents Samael, which is another name for Yaldabaoth. And then finally, the big drop in that last video was that Yaldabaoth also then tried to create his own archons. So Aeon, Sophia, creating archons, Yaldabaoth trying to create his own archons, Archon, Aeon, Icon, so on and so forth. And one of those evil archons of Yaldabaoth was Typhon. And there's a story in the Pistis Sophia of these 5 captured rebellious archons. No coincidence, we see one captured and chained up, and Clive has to go and fight it. So I do think that's all pretty strong, compelling evidence that Gnosticism is in some way an influence, and in this video today, I'm going to give you even more compelling evidence as to why this is the case. I'm going to do it mostly by covering the identity of Clive and Rogue Hooded Guy. So the relationship between these two. They're both Ifrits. Clive was originally supposed to be the Phoenix. He was supposed to be the manifestation of the powers of immortality, of life itself, but it passed up on him and went to his brother Joshua. In suddenly losing what was supposed to be this life direction, Clive has to find a new one. Comes the shield of Joshua, but then, of course, at the fall of Rosaria and the emergence of the second dark icon, Clive is cast out into the wilderness, just like Cain in the Bible. Cain had to wander the Bible, branded with a dog as a companion. And throughout the story of Cain, Cain is haunted by the demon energy that is within him, because Cain is believed to be the son of Samael. Yes, when Samael seduced Eve in the Garden of Eden at the fall of man, they actually split the twins that she had. They were split between 2 fathers. Pretty freaky, I know, but Cain came from Samael and Abel came from Adam. And there was the divide between humanity and demons. A part of this seduction, they say, in terms of if you think that Samael also represents Yaldabaoth in some Gnostic texts, is that Yaldabaoth was trying to undo, he was trying to sabotage the divine spark that Sophia had placed in all humans. And this divine spark is what all humans need to survive. It's what they're yearning for, it's what they're searching for. You go to 16 and everyone on this planet has to bask in the light of the crystal. They know they even smoke it, they even drink it. Nothing can survive without this mother's essence. And this is very much the essence that Sophia put in, and how that relates to the Sambric artwork. Anyway, going deeper into Yaldi, the first three names of the domineering archon, along with, again, Sackless and Samael. He breathed the soul into the first man, Adam. Sophia then installed in him the divine spark. Yaldabaoth then produced the serpent spirit, which is the origin of all evil, to try to undo that spark. And in seeing how blind, which blindness is the core theme of Yaldabaoth, he's blind to the truth of things, Sophia then goes to work against her own son, something that Yaldabaoth sees as a betrayal, even though he doesn't know her, just like we have, in my theory, Clive's mother betraying him, or stepmother, or mother figure. And I do believe that at the fall of Rosaria, that created at least an emotional resonance that attached Clive and Robed Hooded Guy, through which Robed Hooded Guy was able to re-emerge, as well as the dwindling power of the mother crystals, allowing the dark Ifrit to break out the cage. So I think there's just the emotional resonance possibility that's what connects Clive and Robed Hooded Guy. Robed Hooded Guy was cast out of the pantheon, betrayed by his fellow deities, and that revenge, that hatred, is something that Clive also felt in that moment of Rosaria falling, and that within itself could have summoned Robed Hooded Guy. But I do think it's a bit deeper than that. Because again, there's a reason why Clive was supposed to be the Phoenix, but it was passed up. And I do believe that at least hints implies the possibility Clive has some unique origin. Now, I've pondered on that and I've speculated, is it because Annabelle, if she is his mother, from Sambric, a different tribe of Israel. In the biblical story, if one person of significant royal blood married a different one in a different tribe, that would bring about fire and destruction. So maybe that happened. But I think there's the possibility, if it's not literal, at least thematical, that Robed Hooded Guy and Clive could either be one of two things. They could be twins, they could be brothers, or they could be a father-son relationship. That sounds really weird, but follow me. What we have to remember in biblical and religious stories is that there's many figures throughout who have their physical mother and father, their worldly one, and then very separately their spiritual one. This is not uncommon. It happened with Cain and Abel. You could also say it kind of happened with Jesus, though from the Virgin Mary it's more the Immaculate Conception. But even who Mary represented, she in the Gnostic text was a representation of the Barbalo, the first pure divine feminine aspect, of which Sophia is the only female archon who also represents that. And that Mary is more or less just a physical conduit for this Barbalo aspect. She's just a conduit for a spirit. And I think that could be a case with Clive's origins. That he actually upon birth was blessed in a far different way by the mother crystal than was expected. Because again, the icons are all carrying the mother crystal's blessing. The bearers, the term bearer, like childbearing, and the individuals we see who are branded, who are imprisoned, enslaved, and killed throughout this game. Like, this is the subjugated class in Final Fantasy 16, bearers, those who are able to naturally manifest the mother's divine gifts, of which we could see the 7 icons, like Sophia's 7 archons, being the peak of this blessing. And what I think happened is that in giving Clive his blessing, rather than give him the Phoenix, the Mother Crystal gave him something so much more powerful, in knowing that her light was fading and diminishing, and this world would need a savior from the coming evil that was about to be released from its prison. Just like Sophia works to go against Yaldabaoth, Sophia in the Gnostic text creates two figures, of which I think Clive could be one or both, like an amalgamation. These two figures are Saturniel and I don't know how to say this. Sabaoth. Sabbath. I think it comes from like the name Sabbath, the seventh day that Jesus rested, and Sabbath is actually listed as the being that leads to the Sabbath, the seventh day of God. So he leads to it. He preludes it, because Sabbath, just like how with the seven Jin kings, there was Mars, which was associated with Samsamil, which is another word for Samael, the constellation Mars, red dot in the sky in 16. The OG Ifrit. Coincidentally, in the first book of Samuel in the Old Testament, we also have a similar calendar, except for the sixth heaven and the one associated with Mars is associated to Sabaoth, I'm going to say. And in the Pistis Sophia, she supported Sabaoth in his rebellion against his father. So Sabaoth is one of the three children of Yaldabaoth. Now think about that. He's one of the children of Yaldabaoth. So therefore, with Yaldabaoth being the son of Sophia, Sabaoth is the grandson of Sophia, which I'm theorizing is what the Mother Crystal system is based on. And what that means is that there is a close relationship between Sophia and Sabaoth. And when you look at Clive, the fact that he's coming into this world and is the only being who's able to use all of the power of the icons. He's like a conduit. He can absorb. That scene that we saw with Benedicta, where he goes up to her and just like takes her power by force, and to see the fear in Benedicta's eyes, like that was really telling to me when I'm going through all this sort of demonology, all of this heavy Old Testament like figures and potentials that Clive could be. It was really telling to me when I saw how scared Benedicta got. What are you? And I think it's no coincidence. It makes tremendous sense that Sabaoth, associated with Mars, the sixth heaven, grandson of Sophia, could be what Clive is based on, and why he is able to use the Mother Crystal's power in such an intimate and powerful way, unlike anyone else. But yeah, continue on. Sophia established the kingdom for Sabaoth over everyone, that he might dwell above the 12 gods of chaos, receiving great authority against all the forces of chaos. Clive looks like he has that kind of authority. Hence his name is derived from Sabbath, which corresponds to the seventh heaven of rest that he rules, indicating either rest from his struggle, Clive from his struggle, or as the one who will not rest on his father's creation, but change it. And here's Clive trying to change the entire freaking world by ending this Mother Crystal system. And even that, in the trying to change the system, the story in Gnosticism about how Sabbath and also who Sabaoth works with, Saturniel, how they sometimes confuse what the main evil in this is. They actually go to attack Yaldabaoth, the big evil Yaldabaoth who tries to manipulate their minds, and they confuse the actual true deity, actual God itself, as being Yaldabaoth, and they almost bring about the destruction of the universe by confusing the one true God with the false God. And there's all these super elaborate, complex, cool stories. And in Jan Zandi's interpretation of Sabaoth's role as being the opposite of Yaldabaoth, his polarity, the same and born from, like the son of Yaldabaoth, but inherently opposite, and that Yaldabaoth represents the evil and Sabaoth represents the good. Now it says here that Sabaoth becomes the current ruler of the world and thus fulfills the role of the God of Israel. Now, guys, I've been talking about the 12 tribes of Israel, the warring tribes, how it's very thematically similar to the war that we're seeing here in Valisthea, Ark of the Covenant, battling for that, something that was rumored to have the secrets of immortality to it, Joshua being one of the core leaders of one of these tribes of Israel, just like we have Joshua in the game. And yeah, the main enemy of these tribes of Israel was Samael, aka Yaldabaoth. But the prophecy that one would come along representing the true God and break this perpetual war, it says here that more or less Sabaoth played that role. And upon doing that, and this is where I finally found the link, because again, Typhon is one of the 5 rebellious archons that Yaldabaoth set upon the world that we see Clive fighting. Well, again, I couldn't work out when I first saw Typhon how it worked, because Typhon is from Greek mythology. According to Hesiod, Typhon was the son of Gaia and Tartarus, However, one source has Typhon as being the son of Hera alone, while another makes Typhon the offspring of Kronos. And Typhon and his mate Echidna were the progenitors of many famous Greek monsters. How did that tie with Gnosticism? Well, like I said, the Gnostics actually incorporated Greek mythology, and there were various Greek philosophers who also incorporated Gnosticism into their worldview. Celsus, a 2nd century Greek philosopher, identified Yaldabaoth with Kronos and Sabaoth, and Adonai with Zeus. And that's significant because in the Gnostic sources, one of the versions of the story says that Yaldabaoth himself, after his attempts to trick humanity into believing that he was the true God in becoming the ruler of this world and subjugating them and denying them free will, that for his crime he was thrown into Tartarus. Tartarus, which is the old Greek mythology prison that is more or less like hell. And after being thrown in Tartarus, Yaldabaoth envies his son, whereupon his envy takes on shape and becomes death. Is it possible that, at the fall of man, where we don't have Ifrit in the pantheon, the red dot in the sky, just like Dalamud in 14 was a prison, that Road Hooded guy has essentially been in thematic Tartarus, and in his envy takes on the shape of death. Another term for this is chaos, because he is called the son of chaos. We have chaos on the freaking book. And in Yaldabaoth slash Samael's time being in prison, from death came envy, wrath, weeping, roars, loud shouting, sober and grief emerge. All of these emotions which relate to lamentation during funerals. And the reason why this was kicked out and controversial among early Christians and associated with Satan is they interpreted lamentation of the dead as having a lack of control over your emotions. It was a poor display because it showed a lack of faith in the kingdom of God and heaven, and therefore it was generally looked down upon. But I just want to cycle back just to that section of the Greek philosopher, even identifying Yaldabaoth with Kronos and Yaldabaoth having one of his archons being Typhon. Well, what was Kronos in Greek mythology? He was a titan. He was one of the original titans in the world, and that's what they called them. What do we have in 16? Lost Titan. This giant ass thing that we see Clive running up is called a Lost Titan. And of course, we have Titan Hugo in this game. This seems separate, different to that. I think that this could be a take on the Greek Titans, and that's what Clive is going up against here, which again would be another form, another agent of Yaldabaoth, of Rogue Hooded guy. And I just want to talk about Yaldabaoth's strategies, because I think they could be akin to Rogue Hooded guys. But for this, I quickly need to tee up why I think Clive could be Sabaoth, but also Saturniel, because Yaldabaoth, of course, had his own son who turned against him and betrayed him to return the good to the world and to break the system out of a lock of fate. And the word fate gets used a fair few times in Gnosticism to bring about free will. Well, that was the grandson of Sophia, but Clive could also be this figure, potentially, on amalgamation, is Sophia created another being of her own, Saturniel, credited as the second son of God. Saturniel is an angel created by Sophia, similar to how she created his brother Yaldabaoth, and he acts as the antithesis to Yaldabaoth, being the bringer of chaos and free will rather than order and suppression. While he is considered fallen, this should not be considered converse to his benevolence. He is a major figure of Gnosticism, along with being the patron of the unfortunately demonized Satanism. So bear this in mind. Saturniel is this very complex figure that can often be associated and confused with Samael, with Yaldabaoth, Saturniel, Satan, but is actually a benevolent figure. Some say it's a benevolent version of the devil of Samael, but this associates it with being a brother created by Sophia. And let's just remember that in Final Fantasy 16, Clive is constantly going to be getting confused and conflated and misinterpreted as being the second dark icon of fire. Again, we have it in the story that upon hearing of the emergence of the dark Ifrit, Barnabas sends out Benedicta to hunt it down. but ends up coming across Clive. Clive, who is, of course, like Ben Starr says, very strong in his humanity. He is benevolent. He is the hero of our story. And this is why I want to make it clear. I don't think Clive is the villain. I think he's going to be the mistaken villain. And that actually in mistaking him as the villain, this is actually what could unify the other icons in opposing Clive. And in that unification, I did this video here about duality, chaos and order, that Clive being misconstrued as the villain in a roundabout way could actually bring resolution to the world. But yeah, continuing on, Saturniel, unlike Yaldabaoth, incorporated the light of his mother and the light of the true God, instead of the darkness that Yaldabaoth had, which made him a benevolent entity and a defender of free will. Unlike his older brother, he also has a good relationship with his nephew, Sabaoth, as they both want to end the tyrannical rule of the self-proclaimed true God. One of the core powers of Saturniel is free will manifestation. He has or can develop free will, the ability of beings to make their own choices free from outside influences. This makes him immune to fate, as he can forge his own fate and defy prophecies. Clive literally talk about how they're going to save the world and they're going to do it on their own terms and in their own way and in their own time. The fates will fall. Very juicy, man. So if we have Rogue Hooded Guy and we put this all together, Rogue Hooded Guy could be an amalgamation of Yaldabaoth and Samuel, the enemy of the tribes of Israel, the fallen son of the Mother Crystal, cast off. And that in the Mother Crystal, she imprisoned him, and upon her light fading, he is now broken out. He's trying to attain domination over the world, and the Mother Crystal, in its last, just like Sophia, in its last-ditch attempt to redeem the world, creates the Sabaoth Saturniel figure that is Clive. And what does Samuel Yaldabaoth do in response to this? Well, in the Gnostic story, and I think we're seeing this with Clive, desperate for allies, Yaldabaoth meddled with the mind of Saturniel to make him almost subservient to the demiurge. He was brought to the false heaven and told that he was the creation of Yaldabaoth. While it worked for a while, no memories could be hidden forever, especially the memories of a cosmic entity. So Yaldabaoth messed with Saturniel's head, trying to convince him that he was of Yaldabaoth's making. Rogue Hood Guy ghosting Clive. I think we had one scene where Clive sees him at a cliff and he's like, "Why did you call out to me?" or something. There's clearly a big psychological game happening between these two figures. But yeah, eventually Saturniel's memories came flooding back. He'd finally found his true enemy, lumbering around as if he was of any importance. Furthermore, he figured out that Yaldabaoth was planning to enslave all living beings under his grasp in an attempt to make himself the one true God. Saturniel gathered his allies. He recongregated the angels because they had been scattered in their own feuds and their own battles that were originally on his side during the first war in heaven. So this was a second war.
Who are we? What are the dominants? We are but mighty acts of God.
Recongregates. He unifies them, just like Barnabas thinks he is doing in the game. Know that he's going to unite all the dominants. Saturniel does it in Gnosticism. Clive is going to do it in this, and in doing so, all of them, they find their true mother, being Sophia. Because I know this is going to be the power of the Mother Crystal. He even apologized to God to get him back on his side. He finally had enough in his army to rebel against his brother. And they go, they fight Yaldabaoth, and they bring him down. Actually, oh no, there's a little bit of detail on that. The army of Saturniel and God fight against Yaldabaoth and his corrupt archons. And after another cosmic war, thanks to the overwhelming power on their side, they managed to win. Yaldabaoth flees to a secret location, and humanity was able to gain its true freedom. While Saturniel gained an arch enemy, again, he gained a friend. Sabaoth approached him during the war and managed to bond over their shared love of humanity and disdain of Yaldabaoth. Even just reading that, I'm kind of attributing Clive as being an amalgamation of both Sabaoth and Saturniel. What if it's possible that Sid is one of these characters? No, because Sid is obviously the very prominent person who takes Clive, who's just wandering on a revenge arc in the wilderness, and sets him very much straight. Sid looks like he's going to be such a good daddy figure in this. But not only that, I think we hear in the trailer that it's Sid who mostly conveys to Clive that they need to destroy the crystals. I think it's more or less Sid who has the deeper understanding. That's in his research with the black belt, which I think is another term for the blight that's happening. It's Sid who creates this base that we're going to be going to a lot in 16 that is there to be refuge to all the bearers and all the people who are branded and persecuted. And yeah, it seems to me like Clive has to question Sid, like, are you sure? Do we actually need to destroy the mother crystal thing? So I think Sid is significant enough that he could be one of these figures, and this friendship described in Gnosticism could be a mirror of their relationship. Freaking cool, man. It'd be freaking cool. Anyway, I think that's most of the juice I wanted to fly out for this video. I wanted to attempt to keep it shorter. I don't know how well I've done with that. I will just quickly leave off on the 12 authorities that create the 7 powers in the Gnostic stories. So again, it's interesting that there's 12 authorities, just like there's 12 tribes of Israel in the biblical stories. And of those 12 tribes, they're actually separated into two. I think it's Judah and the other, what name is eluding me, but basically they were split. The tribes of Israel were split, and what divided Judah and its rival amalgamation of tribes was the River Jordan. And we go to the map of 16, we have Storm and Ash, and it's separated by the ocean and the section of the Crystalline Dominion, which is seen as almost like a United Nations point. It's a neutral territory. And when the warring tribes of Israel needed to communicate between the two warring versions of it, they would meet at the River Jordan to have diplomatic discussions. And to see that parallel is then reflected in the Gnostic story about how 12 heavenly authorities create 7 powers. Sophia then has these 7 powers placed under her. And I just want to read out I won't try the names because it's going to be hard, but Sabaoth, who we've been talking about, is one of those 7 powers, and he represents the kingdom. So kingdom is his tile. And of course, Rosaria being the prime kingdom that we're going to, it's the fall of that brings about it. And also Clive, who's trying to unify this world. I think kingdom could be very fitting, but I'll just read the other qualities, and I think we could associate them with arts. 7 archons, and say archons, icon. Those were, no, we'll try the names actually. Athoth representing goodness, you could kind of say that's Shiva. Eloise representing forethought. I would say Sid, forethought, knowing, understanding. Staphylos representing divinity. I'd attribute that to Dion, associated with light, thinking he's part of this holy empire, and returning to that after he overcomes whatever darkness is in Sambrique. I think that's going to be a really cool arc for Dion. Yao representing lordship. I would say, I see either Barnabas, being king over in Walload, but actually for this I would put Hugo, simply because there's that line that I misinterpreted as being Barnabas. It's actually Hugo in the trailer who says, I thought we shared a vision that I was going to be king of the world. You see Hugo sort of sat on the throne, pushing down his diplomats. He doesn't want a democracy. It seems like Benedicta sets in Hugo's mind this vision, this desire to become more than just this subjugated icon, because we do see Hugo talking about how he thinks it's disgusting that they are this powerful and able to command the power of icon, and yet they're treated like dirt. And I think Benedicta uses that to set his sights much higher. So I would say lordship for that. Again, Sabaoth is Clive with kingdom. Adonin representing jealousy. I think that's easily Benedicta. And then Sabateos representing understanding. I would go with Barnabas from that, being as he has the power over the void. He's the only character that we've seen in this coming through the void. He came out of the sea, landless, titleless, and being that in the Gnostic story, Sophia, whose name is wisdom, that her power, when she falls from the higher realms into the lower realms, she's lost beneath the ocean. And to think that Barnabas, again, in Gnosticism, she falls into the void, that Barnabas has gone to this void and seen some of this wisdom of the Mother Crystal, this understanding, and that is what has set Barnabas on his mission. But again, this understanding, this wisdom, could be an illusion, because the Gnostics talk heavily about this true gnosis meaning wisdom, that it will constantly be getting sabotaged by the OG Prince of Chaos, the son of Sophia, Yaldabaoth, that he's constantly looking to corrupt that understanding into false understanding. And we could easily guess that maybe that's what Barnabas is under, and why he's kind of like being set up seemingly like our villain. But I don't know, maybe it is just me, that I don't think Barnabas is going to be the real villain. He's just confused and perhaps tapping into powers that, he doesn't fully understand. And that's where I'll leave off on this final line by a guy called Geheim in 1785. He wrote this in his mystical depiction of Sophia. It says, as described by Irenaeus, the great mother principle of the universe appears as the first woman, the Holy Spirit, moving over the waters, and is also called the mother of all living. Under her are four material elements: water, darkness, abyss, and chaos. If you didn't watch my last 40-minute video, of which this could end up being almost just that as well, again, we have the description that the oceans have gone corrupt because there's darkness, there's madness, the void, insanity, cannibalism, warped realities in the oceans of Final Fantasy 16. There we go, guys. I am out. I am done. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I've seen a few of you guys saying that I really need to play Xenoblade. I think it was Xenoblade. That uses a lot of Gnostic mythology and lore. That's really cool. The only exposure I have had to it was, of course, Persona 5, where we have Yaldabaoth in that. But I really think it's really cool, and for me at least, I'm highly suspecting Final Fantasy 16 is using it. Hopefully that made any freaking sense. Oh god, absolute basted my turkey. My goose is cooked, absorbing all of that lore into my head. But it's really cool. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. I'd also really appreciate anyone who hasn't been getting notifications for the channel to unsub and resub, as well as hit that little bell button. I've been in talks with YouTube directly, trying to understand exactly why a lot of you guys are saying you're not getting notifications for this, and they simply said, and it was so BS, they were like, your audience must be confused on how the bell button works. It was so patronizing, it was so arse. I basically reached out to them to try to understand why less than 200 of you 100,000 subs are actually coming to these vids via notifications. They said that it is pretty unusual, and it should be more than that. And then tried to say that my audience must be confused. I miss the days when just hitting subscribe on a channel was enough, but now you need to hit subscribe, bell button, and then also activate your notifications if you want to see more from this channel of these vids, of what I've got a whole roadmap planned from now up until the release of 16. I will be playing it here on this channel, as well as after the stream doing little hangouts and reviews and talking about all the different themes and thoughts and feelings that we have over on Full Fantasy Peasant after stream. I cannot wait for it, guys. Thank you again as always, and yeah, there was a link down below in the Patreon if you also want to get your name as well as an avatar for rolling at the end of these videos, which really feels like a pretty inferior and minor way to express my gratitude to those of you who support me over there and keep me doing this. But yeah, it is really appreciated. Anyway, guys, I will see you on the next video. Goodbye.